On February 26, 2025, the peaceful atmosphere of the Santa Fe region was shattered by shocking news. Gene Hackman, the Hollywood film legend, and his wife Betsy Arakawa were found deceased at their private residence. However, rather than the peaceful passing of an elderly couple, the scene unfolded into a disturbing veil of mystery. According to investigative reports, Betsy Arakawa was determined to have died approximately 3 weeks earlier, around February 3rd. The fact that Gene Hackman had lived alongside his wife's body for nearly a month without reporting it raised countless questions. Although official records from the authorities stated that the cause of death was cardiovascular disease and complications related to Alzheimer's, what police observed at the scene was entirely inconsistent with a calm, natural death. Disrupted belongings, unfinished notes, and a heavy, oppressive atmosphere enveloping every corner of the house suggested that this was not merely a family tragedy, but the final chapter of a decades-long journey of guarded secrets. When law enforcement officers first stepped onto Gene Hackman's 23-acre estate in Santa Fe, they did not find the warmth of a retirement home, but instead an overwhelming sense of a fortress designed to withstand the apocalypse. The residence was not just an architectural structure, it was a masterpiece of extreme security. The entire property was enclosed by stone walls rising to 12 feet, reinforced with specialized steel mesh. At every potential blind spot, thermal cameras and highly sensitive motion sensors remained on standby. What stunned investigators most was a revelation from former construction contractors. They had once been hired to pour concrete walls up to 18 inches thick. This was not a standard design for a wine cellar or storage room. It was the standard of military bunkers designed to withstand heavy explosive force. The level of security was hauntingly intense. All staff, from housekeepers to maintenance specialists, were required to sign strict non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, lasting decades. They recalled that Gene Hackman, an actor known for his calm demeanor, became extremely guarded, even paranoid, when discussing privacy within the home. Everyone understood implicitly that there were doors never to be opened, and underground areas that even long-serving staff had never set foot in. His living space was not intended for lavish gatherings, but for the protection of something invaluable, something he had spent his entire life silently guarding behind layers of thick concrete and sealed confidentiality agreements. In the early days of the investigation, unusual disturbances in Gene Hackman's library drew the attention of forensic experts. The room, once a sanctuary of scripts and literary works, now appeared unsettling, with shifted bookshelves and scattered files covering the floor. All evidence suggested this was not a burglary, but a deliberate act of arrangement. As if the late actor had attempted to mark or reveal something he had spent his life concealing shortly before his final breath. The sense of unease peaked when investigators discovered a subtle misalignment in the room's design. Behind a large mahogany wall panel, an architectural feature resembling a fixed bookshelf, there was a narrow passage, less than 4 feet wide, perfectly concealed so that it was indistinguishable to the naked eye. When the panel was opened, a damp, heavy air filled with the scent of time and cold metal rushed out, carrying an ominous silence. A spiral stone staircase emerged, descending endlessly into the depths below. Precise measurements later confirmed a staggering figure. The tunnel extended 312 feet into the ground. Constructing such a large and deep structure beneath a residential estate was a technical feat, but also a profound mystery in terms of intent. Who would spend millions of dollars and secretly mobilize manpower to excavate a deep well beneath their own home? As investigators began descending the first steps, they felt they were not merely entering a tunnel, but stepping into a forgotten chapter of history, a place where Gene Hackman had silently served as a guardian for decades. The beam of their flashlights revealed cold stone walls, where traces of rusted iron restraints and dust-covered surfaces began to tell a story of secrets never meant to see daylight. As they reached the final steps of the endless spiral staircase, the investigators were forced to hold their breath at the sight before them in the vast underground chamber. Instead of a simple storage archive, the space featured the classical vaulted architecture of late 19th century Spanish colonial design. an engineering marvel buried nearly 100 meters underground. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of aged metal and dust, as though time itself had stopped centuries ago. Attention quickly turned to 47 decayed wooden crates scattered across the room, containing relics that challenged all historical understanding. First was a ledger dated 1947, filled with enormous financial figures and lists of names written in archaic German, dense with incomprehensible annotations, suggesting a covert network of activity beyond the control of any government at the time. Nearby were 63 old photographs that unsettled observers, showing individuals in unfamiliar military uniforms not belonging to any documented national armed forces. Most disturbing was a photograph of the tunnel entrance from the 1940s, where two faces had been systematically cut out, as if an invisible hand had erased all traces of those who had once been there. But what truly shook the investigators was found on the stone walls themselves. There, hundreds of symbols and detailed astronomical diagrams had been deeply engraved, forming an astonishingly precise star map. These markings not only depicted the exact positions of constellations from 12,000 years ago, but also coldly predicted the structure of the sky 12,000 years into the future. Standing in this underground chamber, among ancient mysteries, one could not help but feel a chill at the realization that Gene Hackman was not merely a landowner, but had become a silent guardian of a trove of knowledge or a mysterious legacy that may have existed long before modern civilization. This place was not just a bunker. It was a sanctuary of answers, waiting to be awakened in the eternal silence of the earth. Deep within the chamber, the investigators' attention was drawn to a single object positioned at the far wall. It was an iron door approximately 4 inches thick, its surface covered in rough rust like scars of time. The door had no handle and no lock, appearing as though it had been welded shut decades ago to prevent anyone from going further inside. It stood there like a silent challenge, a final boundary between the tangible world and unnamed mysteries beyond. Although the door appeared permanently sealed, a strange phenomenon deeply unsettled the experts. Using thermal imaging cameras, they detected a steady flow of cold air moving behind the iron barrier. This airflow was not stagnant or obstructed. It moved with a rhythm, like the breathing of a living organism, proving that the underground space did not end there. It continued further, deeper and more expansive, weaving into subterranean layers that no modern equipment had yet been able to reach. When these pieces of information were forwarded to higher authorities, the response was a frightening and calculated silence. The FBI officially refused to provide any comment on the structure, making no attempt to open the door and offering no explanation for the strange airflow breathing from deep underground. This deliberate indifference from the authorities only fueled increasingly wild theories in the public. Many people began whispering about top-secret Cold War military facilities still in operation, or even something far older. To this day, the steel door still stands, sealing away answers the entire world seems desperate to uncover. The strangeness of the estate was not limited to what lay beneath the ground. It also extended to the way surrounding technology suddenly went silent. Technical experts reviewing the security system were unsettled by an inexplicable gap. All surveillance footage from inside the house had been completely erased or severely corrupted, precisely during the 3-week period following Betsy Arakawa's death. There were no signs of external interference or malware, only a vast void of missing data coinciding exactly with the final days of Gene Hackman's life. However, the external security cameras incidentally captured a few disturbing details. On dark nights, flickering lights of unknown origin moved between the rooms, as though some entity or unknown phenomenon were shifting through the stillness of the house. Deep mechanical sounds, rising from underground and long reported by nearby residents, became clearer than ever before. On some nights, locals witnessed unmarked trucks silently entering the estate, leaving behind clouds of dust and an overwhelming sense of unease about what was being transported out. The atmosphere of secrecy escalated to its peak when, before the investigation could even conclude, an anonymous financial entity from the Cayman Islands suddenly emerged. With overwhelming financial power, They completed the acquisition of the entire property in a matter of moments, blocking all attempts by the media and independent investigators to gain access. This move felt like a direct silencing through money, leaving the public to wonder. What could possibly be so valuable that an unknown corporation would fight for it at any cost over the ruins of a legend? Gene Hackman, a man who spent his life in front of the camera, ultimately left the world behind in a maze of shadowy transactions and buried secrets. Amid the terrifying mysteries buried beneath the ground in Santa Fe, another side of Gene Hackman came into view. A man who was not only a guardian of cryptic legacies, but also a devoted pillar of his family. His relationship with Betsy Arakawa was not merely that of husband and wife, but a quiet fortress of peace he carefully built after stepping away from the bright lights of Hollywood. Within this estate, surrounded by thick stone walls and cold security systems, he tried to create the most tranquil life possible, as if determined to shield his partner from the harshness of the outside world. For Hackman, leaving behind the noise of the film industry for Santa Fe was not an escape, but a conscious choice to value family life. Those closest to him often described a husband who was gentle and quietly attentive, caring for Betsy throughout the years she battled the cruel progression of Alzheimer's disease. His devotion was never shown through public interviews, but through the way he transformed the home into a place of absolute safety. Perhaps it was this compassion and desire to protect his family that led him to take on the role of a guardian of secrets, making the security of his loved ones his highest priority, even if it meant bearing heavy burdens beneath the earth. His decision to remain beside Betsy in her final days, even as the illness erased her memory, became a deeply sorrowful note in the symphony of his life. The 3-week period he spent alone with his deceased wife inside the estate was not merely silence, but evidence of a love that endured until the very last breath. Amid dark tunnels, mysterious astronomical symbols, and public suspicion, the story of Hackman's love for his family becomes the only human element, raising a haunting question. Were the secrets he guarded part of a commitment to protect those he loved from a danger the public was never meant to know? Looking back at the entire Santa Fe story, one cannot help but ask, was Gene Hackman a man driven by paranoia or a true guardian of a truth humanity is not yet ready to face? The existence of a 312-foot tunnel, artifacts that do not belong to our era, and the chilling silence of authorities together paint a picture of a legacy far beyond the scope of a Hollywood actor. Many theories suggest that the tunnel existed long before Hackman ever set foot on the property. He was not the creator of these mysteries. He was someone who chose to take on their burden. For decades, under the guise of a devoted Hollywood star and family man, he silently protected what lay beneath the estate from those seeking power. His act of remaining beside his wife's body in the final weeks of his life, though shocking, now takes on a different meaning. It may have been his final desperate attempt to stay and guard the last iron door before his passing, ensuring the secret would not be violated. When the anonymous entity from the Cayman Islands rushed to acquire the estate immediately after his death, it becomes clear that the game was not over. The secrets at a depth of 312 feet remain there, behind a handleless iron door, still breathing cold currents into the earth. Gene Hackman is gone, leaving behind a question that continues to defy all attempts at resolution. Perhaps the true mystery is not what lies inside the wooden crates or the symbols on the walls, but the sacrifice of the man himself. He spent his life as a hero on screen, and his later years as a silent hero in reality, a guardian of forgotten fragments of history. The story of Gene Hackman in Santa Fe is not merely an investigation. It is proof that some secrets in this world are never meant to be found. The story of the Santa Fe estate has come to an end, yet it leaves behind an unsettling echo. In your view, did Gene Hackman make the right choice in sacrificing his final years to protect the secrets beneath the ground, or was it a burden he was forced to carry? Thank you for joining me on this journey through these dramatic hidden depths.